Alright everyone, so in this video I'm going to show how to make these first two intro blocks again. This L, and then this other second, not the coffee cup, but this second other block that we did together. This is just our first intro to how to use Onshape. So to start, let me delete my old ones, just so we can make them together now. So I'm going to start by making a new project. I'm going to click the plus button here. I'm also in a folder that I've made I called mine Onshape Fundamentals CAD, made it the same as the learning modules. You can make it named whatever you want though, as long as it's some sort of intro. So I'll click the plus and I'll name this intro block 1. Alright, so remember I've got my 3 view planes there. A single finger can orbit, 2 fingers can pan, pinching is your zoom. I can also lock my rotation here. I can drag the view cube, or I can click on it and find different views there as well. I can change my units by clicking those 3 buttons at the top and then on units. And I can get my different measurements with those 2 tools for later on. So to start, I'm going to make a new sketch, which is this pencil button with the line on it. And I have to pick a view plane. I want to start with the front. Now you notice I've got that new box that showed up. That means I've started a sketch. I'm going to click with 2 fingers and click View Normal to Sketch Plane. What that'll do then is it'll rotate my view, so I'm looking right at the sketch plane. Now I can still orbit. I don't want that though. So if I do a 2-finger click, View Normal to Sketch Plane, and lock it, now all I can do is pan and zoom. I cannot orbit anymore. It just makes it a little easier to control. So this is my sketch menu, the pencil with the line on it. What I want to start with is just drawing out that shape, and I always want to start at the origin. It just gives you a point of reference later on. So I clicked on line, and remember, if you press and hold, you get a little cursor that shows up. I like to do that on the iPad. It makes it a little bit easier to see where you're at. So I'm just going to let go with my finger, and it'll choose the first point. And when I press and hold again, it makes a second point. So let go, another point. Holding it makes a line. Let go, it makes a point. Hold, it makes a line. Let go, and it makes a point. If you notice too, it was trying to snap to a spot right there. Can't quite see it because my finger in the way. But it's trying to snap to the midpoint of the line. We don't want that to happen, because what that'll do is it's trying to add extra constraints. It's trying to make assumptions. And there's some assumptions that are okay, like making it vertical or horizontal. But if it's trying to be a midpoint it's not supposed to be, we don't want that. Alright, so there's my rough shape. Notice it turned shaded, meaning that it's now a profile, not just a line, so it means it's closed off. So I'm going to show you here, I'm going to turn my line tool off, and I can now click and drag some of these lines. See how I can change that one, but I can't change this one. If it's black, it means that it's constrained and the location is right. Maybe the size isn't necessarily correct, so I can make it longer and shorter. Blue means that it's not constrained and we need to add dimensions. Now dimensions are just your size limitings on it. So there's a couple different ways. In the sketch menu, all of these at the bottom, so from concentric down to fixed, we call those geometric constraints, and it's to constrain it using geometry. So if you wanted 2 lines to be parallel, 2 lines to be, or a line to be horizontal, equal, there's a bunch of different tools here. We'll go into those later. I'm just going to use the dimension button. And so to do this, if I click and hold so I get my big cursor this time, when I highlight over a line, when I let go, you got to be kind of quick about it too. A white number will show up. The white number is just like a temporary thing to see if that's what you want. If you don't want it, turn the dimension tool off and just do it again. But if I tap now, it'll make that dimension. And based on how we have it, we want this to be 1 inch. So, because we're making this as if it's a bunch of half-inch blocks all glued together. So, like 2 half-inch blocks on the bottom, 2 on top, so my overall width would be 1 inch. So let's do another width dimension. Do that line. There's my white number. Tap. That's going to be 0.5. So now let's do a height dimension. We know that that's going to be 0.5. And we got one more. Let's do the overall height. And this is going to be 1.5. Now 2 other things I want to show. So number 1, I can click and drag a dimension and just move it out of the way, just so it's not on top of your object. Just do that after you create it. Lastly, you notice all the lines are black, so this is fully constrained now. What I could still do though is I could try to dimension, say, that line. We know it's 1 inch because the overall height is 1.5, that little line is 0.5, and watch what happens when I make this. It's gray and it didn't let me change the number. So that is what's called a reference dimension, and it's just there to show you what the value would be. You don't need to do them at all, but sometimes they're useful just to look at. So for example, if I changed this to 2 inches, the 0.5 stays the same, but the 1.5 is what changes now. So whatever your critical dimensions are, make sure you have those dimensions, the other ones that would be references. So let's make this 3D. I can hit the check mark here. And I always like, after I finish a sketch, to look at the isometric view. What that does then is it just makes it back to like a nice 3D isometric view. In the Onshape modules, they'll have you rename your sketches. If I click those 3 dots next to it, I can rename it. A lot of times it's useful, especially for big ones. You can call this like your main sketch or something like that, but like if you've got a very complicated part, it can be useful to troubleshoot. So now that we've got a 2D thing, didn't mean to drag it. Let's make it 3D. I'm going to click on the globe spot, and this is all of your 3-dimensional features. To just extrude, to make it from flat to 3D, we use the extrude tool. So I'm going to tap on the L to choose my surface, and we'll always use the solid one. There's a bunch of different features on here that you can do as well, and we can also use this to cut out shapes, which we'll get to later. So you can have like different depths. Blind is usually what we use. We can set our depth here and just make it 0.5 inches. And there's our finished L. So that is block 1. Let me show you guys block 2. So again, we got to click the plus. We're making a full new document for this, and I'll call this intro block 2. And I'm going to start with making a new sketch again on the front plane. I'm going to view normal. And if you remember what it looks like, I'm going to draw just the rough shape first. So in this one, what makes it different is that we actually have to do it in 2 sketches. We can't do it all at once. Because if you remember from that initial thumbnail, it has 2 different depths. So if something's not perfectly flat, or like a uniform height, it takes 2 extrusions or more. So there's my approximate shape. Let's add some dimensions. Oh, wrong spot. And now before I start to dimension this, I'm going to show you guys some of the geometric constraints that exist. So I know that this line is going to be 1/2 inch. Because like before, it's just a bunch of 1/2 inch blocks that are glued together. So let's move this out of the way. So what I'm going to do is I know that that's 1/2 inch. I also know that this is going to be 1/2 inch. I also know that this is going to be 1/2 inch, and this one, and that one. So what I'm going to do then is in my sketch menu, there's a constraint called equal. So once I have all of those lines selected, I can click equal, and it just automatically made all 5 lines 1/2 inch. So now if you look, the only dimension that I still need to add is a height dimension right here. I can still drag this blue line and make it taller, right? So because it already knows the width of that line, right? If that's 1/2 inch, that's 1/2 inch, that's 1/2 inch. That blue line has to be 1.5 inches. It's just the location is what's off. So I'm going to give that a 1.5 inch height. Oh, sorry, not 1.5, 1 inch. Because it's 2 blocks tall. There we go. So there's my first sketch using the geometric constraints. Because I could do a reference dimension too, right? And just to see, that is 1.5 inches. That's also 1/2 inch. But we don't need to necessarily know that, right? These are all just references because we already said that all those lines had to be equal. That's why all those are showing up gray. So let's extrude this. I like to look at my isometric view. Click on the sphere shape, extrude, tap on my face, And then the depth I want this time is just 0.5 inches. I only want it to go part way, like that. So now I need to have a second sketch off of this, because if you look at the picture, there's a little square that juts out of there, right? But it's really easy to do. All you need to do is we can start another sketch, and we don't have to choose front, top, or right for the sketch. We can choose any face on here that we want. Oh, and I accidentally clicked. Undo, undo, delete that. So new sketch, and I want to start a sketch on this face here. So I can start a sketch on the face of the object, right? Because there's a little square right here that we want to come out. So now if you look, see how there's like a little extra rectangle? Like the sketch plane is defined as the front of it, of the object. So there's another new rectangle that was made. So now we're working on the front of it. So again, I'm viewing normal to isometric. And now in this case, it's extremely easy to make, because we know that it's just going to extrude from right there to right there. And now because, oh, I don't want that line. There we go. Because we already have boundaries on those other edges, all we need is that line. We already know its height, we know its width, because it's based on the rest of the model. So really, you only need to draw that line. You can trace out the rest, but really you're just wasting your time. So I'm going to hit the check mark. And now because I've got those edges defined, I can extrude again. And this time, just clicking on that box. Let me look at my isometric view real quick. There we go. So you can see how that one bit's coming out. So I'm going to change this to 0.5 inches. Just like that. Now remember too, extrude can actually go backwards as well. You can use this instead of as an add, you can call it a remove, and you can like cut in your shape if you wanted to. We're not doing that though in this case. We are adding, and we are bringing it out 1/2 inch. Just like that. And now look at it from a different view too, because like the isometric view is kind of like a optical illusion. There's your shape. And that's it for both of the intro blocks.